One of my film,
One of my, Timmy Brow, Timmy Fiavai got my very good, thank you.
Yeah, you could have washed your hands before you come in here. How have you been up to this morning?
Yes. I was listening to the forecast yesterday and I ran out of time. I've been trying to get the vegetables planted and ran out of time last night, so I got the carrot and parsnip ridges up, but I didn't have time to plant them, so it said round about dawn the rain will start, so I got up round about dawn and the rain hadn't started, so I thought I'll get the carrots in. So carrots and parsnips planted, and now that lovely bit of rain just started just as I covered up the last carrot seeds. So
good timing.
Yeah, so I didn't need to water them in, which is even better.
Good. Yeah. All right, so that explains that one anyway. You have to want to get that one out of the way. On this morning's programme, between now and 12 o'clock, we're going to be talking. We never got to talk about transhumanism the last time, did we?
Yeah, we sort
touched on it, didn't we?
Introduced the topic, but didn't really go into it too much. It's quite an interesting thing, really, this whole idea of using technology or augmenting your body with different technology, a bit like hearing aids that we've already got, but actually going 100 steps further into integrating all this technology. So very futuristic stuff, but more and more as we develop, we're getting to a stage where some of this stuff you could have these implants which would augment your sight or your hearing or do all sorts of things.
Well, it's funny because we used to laugh, I suppose. I was quite big into Star Trek when I was younger, and when you looked at the Enterprise in the 70s and stuff, for them and the automatic doors, and you think, oh yeah, what a load of codswallop, you stand there and it opens, and of course,
and it does
everywhere
absolutely.
Now it's happening. And when you look at some of the next generation Star Treks, when Geordie LaForge had the do you ever watch any of the Star Trek?
Yeah.
And they had the visor for his sight, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because he was visually impaired, and you think, well, that sort of dinged into the nerves of his brain and made him be able to see again. And you think back and you think, wow, that will probably happen.
And actually, that's part of what this whole transhumanism movement is about. It's really saying, okay, we know we can't do some of this stuff now, but in another 50 years, chances are we'll be able to do all kinds of things, augmenting your legs so that you can do 100 metres in 4 seconds. And, all this stuff potentially could be possible. So it's sort of challenging people to think about the impact of this. And, as we'll hear, do we need to regulate this? And if we do, you probably need to start regulating now rather than waiting until all this stuff becomes available and then someone says, actually, wait a minute, this is not necessarily the right thing to do. So
I'm too old for the X-ray specs.
Well, you never know.
Right. Also, later at the end of this first hour and into the second hour, we'll be dabbling into some new Manx music, Phil, won't we?
Yeah, Ruth Kegan on Saturday is launching her new album. Her band is launching this. There's a family concert in the afternoon, and then there's a launch, a formal album launch in the evening. The idea of the family concert was the launch is taking place in Noah Bakehouse, and because of the licensing regulations, under 18s couldn't attend after 9 o'clock. So she decided to do a family concert in the afternoon. I think that's at St Ninian's.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice then. So we'll be hearing you in conversation with Ruth, which will be interesting, talking about it.
Yes, a world first. For the first time ever, I'll have used my recording device to play clips into the programme. So let's hope all the technology works for us.
I better check that before we do it then. All right, let's have some. Myself, Simon Clarke, through here to 12 o'clock on Moghrey Jedoonee. And transhumanism we touched on last week, but technology at its futuristic.
Well, yeah, it's very much Star Trek, and again, what's the Star Trek and Star Wars? Definitely Star Trek for me, but there's kind of that split, isn't there, in the sci-fi world as to what. But I'm very much a Star Trek rather than Star Wars fan. Anyway, Article 2 of the Transhumanist Declaration asserts the point We favour morphological freedom, the right to modify and enhance one's body, cognition and emotions. So that's the basis of these transhumanists. To date, areas to improve on include natural ageing, including for diehards, the cessation of involuntary death, as well as physical, intellectual and psychological capacities. Some distinguished scientists even advocate a post-human condition, effectively the end of humanity's reliance on our congenital bodies by transforming our frail versions, version 1 human bodies, into the far more durable and capable version 2 counterparts. But then the pushback against such unchecked optimism is emphatic. Some find the rhetoric quite distasteful in its assumptions about the desire for a prosthetic future. So this is very much the brain living in this bottle with funny bubbles coming up and basically kept alive after the physical body has died. So the potential for ethical problems in particular obviously associated with this. Tattoos, piercings, cosmetic surgery remain a matter of individual choice, and amputation a matter of medical necessity. But imagine an augmented sensory capacity, for instance. If that were to become normal in a particular field, it might then coerce others to make similar changes to their bodies in order to compete. So, if you're working somewhere where you have to have a good memory, and all your co-workers have this little chip implanted in their heads which help them remember things, you're going to feel almost obliged to have to do it even if you don't want to.
Opens the door for exams.
Well, yes, it does. And there's there's a quote here from Isaiah Berlin, as he once put it: "Freedom for the wolves has often meant death to the sheep," which is quite a profound thing, effectively saying that, if whether you like it or not, if everyone else does it and it makes it makes you uncompetitive or unable to manage in the new world, then you're going to have to follow ultimately.
Yeah, it's a worry in some ways, isn't it? Where it can lead, because they talk about you hear or watch the films about cloned armies and things like that, and you think to yourself, that's probably happening somewhere in the world at
Absolutely.
the moment,
and the
Area
exciting
48 or whatever it is.
Yeah, the exciting thing about it is potentially you could have a little a little download option where I want to be able to become a fluent Manx speaker. I know, here's the Manx speaker download, and you just sort of plug this into a little device that's you've been plugged into your brain, and the next thing you're a fluent Manx speaker.
You say it in English and it would come out in Manx.
Yeah. So that's the sort of way that these guys are thinking. I mean, the technology is many decades away before you could get to that. But the question then is, if you could do that, should we allow people to do that? Because if we do, there is then this risk that if one person does it and then a whole load of other people follow, the next thing there'll be huge pressure on everyone to do it. So, interesting stuff.
It is. All right, thank you, Phil, for the time being. 22 minutes, 9.5 minutes past 10. Near enough for a Manxman to give you an update on the weather and give you the duty chemist rota for today. Outbreaks of rain will affect the island this morning, will largely clear away around midday, with some scattered showers developing from mid-afternoon onwards. Cooler than of late in the moderate to fresh southwesterly wind, with the temperature getting up to 13 today. The showers will die away this evening, leaving the night dry with some clear spells as the wind turns to the west or southwest and becomes fresh to strong, with a minimum overnight temperature of 7 degrees.
Fia as vroeg bridge maak nisjes rish chit de vi sledden troben rish tamelt. Na sanme se vore na maach as an jaste ni een fia slo cheel as hig shallen grienach as frasne ge fine le a man. Giechen ue na meenach fijn jas schie les temperelus na svure mush 3 Celsius sonnengoed smoo. Nacht be a chirm les temperelus mush 8 Celsius. Est merach chirm as gial savora al kigen fjara rash na sam sanjaste son tamelt gleden mach ag an astabeg na Marcha Sani.
Gawne na Savora, that one, was it?
Oh gosh, where are we? Gial Savora, bright in the morning. Gial.
Good,
Yeah,
mighty.
Gial is a lovely word.
It is. It certainly is. Phil Gawne and Simon Clarke here on Moghrey Jedoonee till 12 today. And transhumanism, we were touching on, Phil. The worrying for some people, isn't it? Because, you see films, will bring the cryogenics thing in, is where they freeze bodies. And you hear stories of people, being trapped on mountains, or, they've been trying to escape their country, hiding in the undercarriage of planes, haven't they?
Yeah.
Been frozen, because it's minus 40 degrees, wherever it was, and survived it, because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And indeed, there are people now, or there are firms that offer to freeze your body when you die, so that potentially at some point in the long distant future, when technology is advanced, they can bring people back to life. It all sounds a bit
deep.
It's
not very
creepy
natural sounding,
and I
is it?
think this is part of the whole discussion here. It's all about the ethics of this, and is this entirely the right thing to do? But the article that I was or that prompted me to talk about this was from the World Economic Forum, and it goes on to ask, is this all hypothetical? So it says the technologies for broaching such questions are arguably already at hand. Examples of auditory sense augmentation include so-called hearing glove, which stimulated the finger of a deaf person with electromagnetic vibrations, an implanted colour sensor that for its colourblind recipient converts the colour spectrum into sounds, including ultraviolet and infrared signals, and a cochlear implant that streams sounds wirelessly from Apple's mass-market devices directly to the auditory nerve of its recipients, which starts sounding a bit scary. So the discussion is not entirely hypothetical. There is a famous scene in the film The Matrix. I don't know whether
I've never seen it.
No, well, I seem to have dipped into it occasionally, but never seemed to watch the whole thing through. Anyway, in the film The Matrix, in which Morpheus asks Neo whether he wants to take the blue pill or the red pill.
Being a bloke, you take the blue one.
One returns him unawares to his life of total physical and mental enslavement within the simulation program of The Matrix. The other gives him access to the real world with all its brutal challenges. But after experiencing this, he can never go back to life within the Matrix and must survive outside it. So advocates of transhumanism face a similar choice today. One option is to take advantage of the advances in nanotechnologies, genetic engineering, and other medical sciences to enhance the biological and mental functioning of human beings, never to go back. And the other is to legislate to prevent these artificial changes from becoming an entrenched part of humanity, with all the implied coercive biomedicine that would entail from these species. So yeah, it's an interesting. Well, I think it's interesting. Hopefully, I haven't put all the the listeners to switch over to some other show. But yeah, the challenge really is there. I mean, quite obviously. If you ask someone who has real struggle seeing or hearing, would you like some real state-of-the-art devices that will help you hear and see? They're bound to say yes. But so you wouldn't want to ban that sort of technology, but the same sort of technology could also potentially allow people who already have good hearing to hear even more than they currently can. And then, of course, the arguments all come in, and this is where, as I know well,
espionage pops into my mind.
Absolutely, from politics, you always get into these grey areas. It's never as simple as black and white. There are obvious things you quite clearly would want to ban, but then there are other things that maybe just kind of sit in the middle, and you're not quite sure. So yeah, an interesting thing, and over the course of the next generation or two, more and more people are going to have to start thinking about this sort of technology.
Okay, thank you very much. We're still going to be talking about Cherokee shortly as well, and also we'll be looking, Phil talks to Ruth Kegan with her new album that's out as well. We'll be talking and we'll play a couple of tracks from that. But the first of our Manx tracks this morning comes from Mike, Laurie and Al, going back a few years. This one, I think it was recorded live in the Colby Glen Hotel, and this is all about the Derby Haven Blues. Oh dear, what characters together there. Recorded live in the Colby Glen Hotel, Phil, I think 1977 or somewhere like that. Mike Williams, Laurie Kermode and Al Lawrence all together. Mike, Laurie and Al.
Yeah, it was great listening just before this programme to Lawrence, David Collister's Time to Remember piece with him. It's really a fantastic character. Great fun.
Mighty, and they were good old times, a good old-fashioned fun, that wasn't it? And a good night. Okay, Cherokee, Phil.
Yeah, we heard last week a little bit about Cherokee and the attempt to revitalise the language. The indigenous people have spoken Cherokee in North Carolina for 11,000 years, but now there are only 238 people left. So a fellow called Ben Frey is doing what he can to revitalise the language. So Frey's Cherokee language education began while he was a German and linguistic major at the University of North Carolina in the early 2000s. A citizen of the Eastern Band, Frey grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. Cherokee was not taught at home. His grandmother was among the Cherokee youth removed from their homes, placed in boarding schools and punished for speaking the language by a United States government bent on eradicating native cultures. While she and Frey's great-grandmother spoke Cherokee to each other when they didn't want the children to understand, they did not pass the language on. So Frey discovered he had a talent for languages while learning German in high school and pursued it at Carolina. He decided to put his acquisition skills to work, learning his ancestral tongue in Cherokee from cousins who oversaw the tribe's language program. Frey continued improving his Cherokee fluency while completing his degree, and later, during a year-long Cherokee Master Apprentice program at West Carolina University, he continued his learning. It was his doctoral research in language shifts that provided insights that would inform his work to revitalise the Cherokee language. So we'll find out a little bit more about that after the next break. But interesting there that the older generation would speak the Cherokee language and use it as a kind of a secret language to make sure that the kids didn't know what was going on. There was similar sorts of things reported about the use of Manx, maybe in the earlier part of the 20th century when it was more prevalent, and you had native speakers, and they would speak a bit of Manx, and the newer generations wouldn't know what was being said. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it certainly is 13 before 11, and we're talking about Cherokee, of course, on the Indian side of it, and I suppose their struggle in the modern world with the language, maybe, Phil, as well.
Yes, yeah, and of course they describe themselves as First Nation people. The Indian term they don't particularly like. I remember I can't remember how it happened, but Annie and myself ended up going to a place it was described as the end of the world. That was the English translation of this place. It was in Norway, and it was the Southern Sami people, and they'd been over to the Isle of Man to look at the bun skull. Actually, they thought it was a fantastic model for themselves, so they invited us to go over for a language symposium, and there was a First Nation speaker went to that language symposium. But all I can remember was driving out in the snow, and it was just getting deeper and deeper, and about 10 foot high either side of the road. And the other thing I remember was they had these fantastic video of what the kids got up to in the school, and part of their lessons included carving up reindeers and taking the blood away and making all sorts of things out of dead reindeers. And I thought, I doubt whether we'd get away with doing that with Lochtons at the Bun School. But anyway, I digress. So Frey's research compared the way language shifted in two very different settings: the German-speaking communities of eastern Wisconsin and the Cherokee-speaking communities of western North Carolina. Both communities experienced cultural discrimination that curbed use of their native language. Frey expected to find that the use of Cherokee had declined to a greater extent than German because of the government's eradication effort. But to his surprise, Frey found that use of German in Wisconsin communities declined much more rapidly. The reason for both shifts, the evolution of social network structures away from native languages due to industrialization, urbanization and tourism, across the country during the 1800s and 1900s, enclaves of non-English language speakers shifted their language to English out of necessity. So Frey says understanding the mechanics of how a language shift happens gives you a window into how it might go the other way. So if we've broken down social networks in order to shift a traditional language to English, presumably a way to shift back is to build up those networks.
Okay, one more bit on the Cherokee to go. Right, we've got a couple of minutes just to fit in the last piece on the Cherokee part of it as well, Phil.
Yeah, so Frey received a grant to encourage local businesses in the Cherokee area to conduct business in their native language. The two have distributed window signs and sandwich boards that announce we support the Cherokee language, and phrase cards customers can use to conduct business in Cherokee. Starting the process with local business people provides a platform for expanding use of Cherokee across the community, but reviving a language requires much more. Think about all the things you interact with that are in English: novels, music, radio, art, entertainment, social media memes, YouTube videos, Frey said. All of those things are necessary for people to experience in Cherokee too. And this one ties in a little bit with something that I was listening to on the news today there about the hip-hop. Somebody was asking we should have more hip-hop on Manx Radio or some such. Frey has teamed with music scholar Mark Katz, director of Institute of Arts and Humanities, to bring hip-hop artist Joshua Rousey to Cherokee to encourage music making among students at the Cherokee Immersion School. Frey's revitalization efforts have found fertile ground in students like Brooklyn Brown, a native of the Birdtown community of Cherokee and a first descendant of the Eastern Band. Brown wants to help her community bring the language back. The Cherokee language could be gone in a few decades, Brown says. We need all the support we can get to change that. I hope to be part of the fight to save Cherokee and be able to pass this on to future generations.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed, Nick, who sent in an email for us. United States Marine Corps, whose primary job was the transmission of secret tactical messages, talking about wartime probably. Code talkers transmitted these messages over military telephone or radio communication nets using formal or informally developed codes built on their native languages. Their service improved the speed of encryption of communications at both ends of the front line during operations in World War II. The name Code Talkers is strongly associated with the bilingual Navajo speakers, especially recruited during World War II by the Marines to serve in their standard communication units in the Pacific Theatre. Code talking, however, was pioneered by the Cherokee and the Choctaw, I think that is, people during World War One.
Yeah, and of course we should remember that our very own Brian Stoll, when he was working in nuclear physics, was working on some fairly high-level stuff, and he kept all his notes in Manx, and at the time he was the only person who could possibly have known what they meant. So he kept his notes secret by writing them in Manx.
It's the second hour of Moghrey, Jedoonee. Welcome along, Simon Clarke and Phil Gawne with you till 12 today. 9.5 minutes past 11 o'clock is the time. And something new and a first, Phil, haven't we?
Yes. Miraculously, I've been putting it off for a few weeks, but Catherine from Manx Radio, who seems to run the place from what I can see, introduced me to a special technology on my iPhone, so I could go out and take recordings to bring clips into the programme. So after a month of having this thing sat on my iPhone, I finally plucked up the courage, and Ruth Kegan came round to the house and we did an interview.
All right, well, let's hear this because, of course, it's regarding the release this weekend of her new album with her band Anish, and the album called Way of the Gull. So let's hear Phil talking to Ruth first before we have a track.
Okay, so we're here at La Mode on a very miserable day to talk to Ruth about her band Anish and the new album. So, Ruth, can you tell us a little bit about the band and why everyone should be coming along next week to see you?
We formed back in 2009 at the University of York. We were all studying music there. So it's 5 of us in the band: Anna, Dave, Carl, myself and Vanessa. 2 of us are from the Isle of Man, Carl Kramer and myself. 2 are from England, Anna and Dave, and one's from Scotland, so that's Vanessa. So we're a real kind of mixture of places, kind of from all different sort of corners of the British Isles, really. We all studied together. We were in different years at York, but in 2009, when I was sort of halfway through my degree, I was asked by somebody to put together a group for a particular concert that they were doing. And actually, I just sort of said to Carl, because I know he'd played with Tom Callister and Kaz Doherty in the Reeling Stones when he was at QE2, and I knew he composed quite a lot of music as well as playing a lot of Manx trad. Said, well, do you want to come and do this with me? And we'll sort of handpick a couple of other people as well to be with us. And so, between the 2 of us, we kind of concocted this band of 5. And it just ended up working so well that we ended up playing together, and we're still playing together, albeit doing our own things individually in between times as well.
So for the uninitiated, what kind of music would people be expecting to hear?
I think it's a mixture really between a lot of original music written by the lads in the band, Dave and Carl, who are prolific writers, are really, really good, and also a lot of traditional stuff as well. We've got a mixture of Irish and Scottish and Manx, and then some contemporary tunes by writers such as Gilno Carswell, who's Bob Carswell's son, of the band King Hurley. He's a great whistle player and writes some great tunes, and also a couple of other sort of contemporary composers as well, like Niall Kenny. But it's really got a very mixture of flavours, I would say. There's lots of almost little bits of flamenco in there, almost rock bits, kind of jazzy bits as well. It's quite hard to sum up our sound in one kind of description, really. So you'll have to come and see it for yourself and hear it.
There we are, exclusive content on Manx Radio's Moghrey, Jedoonee. That was Ruth Kegan and her band Anish from their new album called Way of the Gull. And we'll be hearing more about Phil having a chat with Ruth and another track from it as well as the programme goes on until 12 o'clock today. So make sure you stick around for that one. Welcome back to the programme, 26.5 minutes before 12 midday. And Phil, you had the pleasure of inviting Ruth Kegan round to talk about a brand new album with her band.
Yes, it's a very exciting new album, which is to be launched on Saturday, this Saturday coming, and we'll hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so you spoke to her before about it. Let's hear Phil in conversation again with Ruth Kegan.
So Ruth, have you actually made any recordings previous to this one, or is this the first?
Well, with this band, we did an EP back in 2011, just before we went to represent the Isle of Man at Lorient. We were invited to go to Lorient then, and it was a shorter CD, so we're really excited to be able to release a full-length album this time. It's got 9 tracks on it, comes to just over 41 minutes of music, and a mixture of original and traditional music on it as well. So it's really exciting. We've got sort of tracks like a few songs in there, a lot of instrumental music, and then things like a track called Red Napoleon, which is obviously where the sort of title track for the album comes from, which translates to Wave the Gull. And that was written by Carl Kramer from the island, and it's a beautiful, beautiful track. He's just lovely, lovely tune, and I think it sums up the coastal footpath pretty well, really. Wrote it inspired by that. So it's a lovely CD, in my opinion. Hopefully everyone else will like it too. And we're really grateful to everyone who pre-ordered it before we actually released it, because it enabled us to get the capital to be able to finish it, because obviously making CDs is an expensive business. So it was both self-funded and funded by pre-orders. So yeah, very grateful for them.
And if people want to get a hold of the CD, how do they go about doing that?
They'll be able to get it in different shops, like the Manx National Heritage shops, also Bridge Book Shop and the Lexicon, and also be able to buy it from my website, from ruthkegan.com/shop, where you can also buy album launch gig tickets.
Excellent. And tell us about the name of the band.
So the band name is Anish, which is basically kind of phonetic spelling of the word. It's more kind of Irish and Scottish Gaelic kind of way of saying the word for now. We obviously have Nish in Manx, but when you look up Nish just as a word, there's quite a lot of people in India with that as their first name. So like Nish Kumar, the comedian, for example.
Yeah.
And it became sort of a thing that, well, we actually maybe just sort of disappear into kind of lots of other sort of Indian first names if we call ourselves just Nish. So we decided to go for Anish, but then kind of keep a more phonetic way of spelling it so people knew how to pronounce it. But yeah, we really liked that idea of the sort of the immediacy that the word Anish or Nish means, this now kind of the moment, and it sort of ties in quite well with, we thought, the name of the album, Way of the Gull, because gulls have this flight and this energy, as do all birds, and this sort of nomadic way of kind of flying around, and we liked the two together. We thought they worked.
Excellent.
Ruth Kegan, and let's hear the title track now from the album Red Napoleon from Anish.
Red Napoleon track, Way of the Gull, as it's translated, by Carl Kramer. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what was going on in what we've just been listening to?
Yeah, it's a lovely track. It's one of my favourites on the whole album, actually, and it's sort of been one of these pieces that we've played for a number of years, but it has been, the arrangement of it has sort of changed over the years as well. And the most recent addition to it was just before we actually recorded, adding a piano section in as well, which is what I play alongside the wooden flute. And we like that chromatic sort of descending bit at the very end there. And yeah, it's just a really beautiful tune, and it really does make me think about walking around certain parts of the Red Napoleon, which I really like, especially on the west coast, which is lovely. And Carl's just such a great tune writer. It's a real joy to work with him. He's a lovely person as well.
Excellent. So we've heard the music now. We've heard a lot about the album and the band from you. How do people get along to the concert? Can you tell us where to go, how to get booked in?
We've got 2 gigs on the Isle of Man on the Saturday the 28th of April. One is a family concert, and we've put that on specifically because our main sort of launch gig, which is in the evening, takes place at Noah Bakehouse. And Noah Bakehouse, being that it's a licensed premises, means that at 9 o'clock in the evening, if you were under 18, you would need to leave. So we thought we would do a specific family concert in the afternoon to allow under 18s to come for £3 a ticket. So anyone who's under 18 can come for £3. Adults are £7. And it takes place at 3:15 until 4 p.m. It's an acoustic concert, so we're unplugged, but it's quite nice in that sense, because people can really listen to all the timbres of the instruments and get real up close. And it's at St Ninian's Church. So if you want to get tickets for that, you can buy them from my website, which is www.ruthkeggin.com /shop. And it's very easy to buy that. You don't need to have a PayPal account or anything. You can just buy it with credit or debit card. Or you can just come along on the day and buy them on the door. There'll be enough for the family gig, I think. However, the album launch in the evening, which is at Noah Bakehouse, taking place at 8 p.m, is selling out really quickly. So tickets for that are £10, and you can buy them from Noah Bakehouse, or you can buy them from my website, as I mentioned before. I wouldn't leave it till buying it on the door, because we've only got about 35 tickets left at this point in time. It doesn't seat a huge amount of people. It's 120 in total. So if you want to come and get your tickets. And if you want to sit down as well, drop me an email as well, because there's limited seats. There's some standing and there's some seating as well. So yes, do let me know if you need a seat.
Well, Gawne.
Oh, sé the bheith, Gawne, sorry.
There we go. Ruth Keggin in conversation. A natural Jeremy Paxman style interview there, Phil. Well done.
Yes. I must hone my techniques. But it's great. And hopefully I'll be able to do more clips that we can include in the future shows.
Yeah. Okay, and we'll play a couple of tracks on next week's programme as well from that album as well.
Brilliant.
Okay, it's 11:45. 11 minutes before 12 midday. We started a song in English and in Manx last week, Phil, didn't we?
Yes, this was the song that Greg Jockins sung with Barul and Vaneinsta Dowell. And last week we heard how this young lad got himself hired by a lady to work for her, and then she made advances to him, and he had to reject her advances. And this is where it all turns a bit nasty. Nach renny me vedden einsja goi len na chorri rum, nach Louis Seuss the vreeri, the goil me vjors foam. So then, did she not, my mistress, get very wrath with me? Did she not take oath and vow to take my life from me? Tre nach jinnen pusai, the vey sodden bedden dou hidden, gowie shooten fia gerach, the churmy ons presoon. When I would not marry her, to be my wedded wife, unjust suits she took against me to put me in prison. And feinje a verach, mas vallach, wie den gres, sliffy ons ma fogged, jerkel rumps surrens bes. I love that word, sliffy ons ma fogged. She slipped it in my pocket. So a ring was on her finger, she was so bare of grace, she slipped it in my pocket, thinking I'd suffer death. So nach ray lesh fair, ik and she, hi me a her lesh soos, kion gotrish bing the reinje, the vey me Was it not by a policeman I was being brought up to go before a jury to receive my judgment? Law me jay ruthen girach na yai harau cower son Louis Seuss, the vol me as Jaime ons presoon. Quite straight I spoke the truth, yet remedy there was none. She swore that I deceived her, then I went to prison. Shuish gilja ega to geisha grummus nish, nach gingy dirmus gammon na craid magita mush. Then all ye young men who are now listening unto me, of me do not make a game, nor mock about this thing. Son gare nach fel me foljach, and sail signed out for gale. O bannock did gry Sally, son gry ruts, nymphs pachiel. For though I am not guilty, I have to leave the world. Blessing on thee, dear Sally, for love of thee I die.
I thought we were going to have to change the broadcast till after 9 o'clock after hearing some of the... wondering where it was going
yes,
there.
Desperate stuff.
Excellent stuff, though. It's great, them words, because you don't hear them every day, some of them words, do you?
No.
Oh,
And
good.
this was A.W. Moore's translation, which is possibly sounding a little bit dated now in the English, but the Manx is timeless.
Good. Good on my head, Phil. Thank you indeed for
Shade
your
of
contribution again tomorrow, Jedoonee. And we'll be having you back in the very near future as well. So
Good on my head.